Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading, and thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. Oh, man, this is funny. So I want to share something with you, the listeners. Well, I guess I probably should ask first, have you ever been catfished? Now, I would assume that most of you have not been catfished. But some of you may have. And if you're not sure what being catfished is when you're led to believe that someone that you may or may not be interested in, or maybe get to be cool with, is one thing or one person, and then you find out later that they aren't who they said they were or portrayed themselves to be. This happened to quite a few of us back in the day. And I want to share this story with you. And I'm only sharing this story because, there's only a select few people, and they may not even hear this podcast, but there's only a select few people who remember this story because it happened 15 years ago. And the only reason why I know it happened 15 years ago is because I blogged. Well, one, I lived it. And two, I blogged about it. And as I'm looking at the blog is dated August 2nd, 2010. And at the time of this recording, we're in 2025. So yeah, it's been literally 15 years ago. All right. So, and this story is always funny anytime I tell it. Okay. So back in the day, when we were first getting introduced to the internet, a lot of people would spend a lot of time in chat rooms. I never really was a fan of chat rooms because I quickly learned that, unless you were in like maybe a hip hop chat room, and you couldn't even really say that definitively for hip hop chat rooms, anybody could be anybody. And I think what at least what I quickly learned is that online you could be whoever you want to be, because here's the thing. Nobody knows who you are if you're not using your real name, and if there's no pictures of you, there's no way to know who you truly are. Case in point, my boy, Eclectic. I remember, and he's gonna laugh when when he hears this. I remember distinctly, Eclectic created a how can I put this? He created a website, and it had these different chat rooms and everything. I mean, like, it was a huge thing. And I can't tell you how many people I got to know, and then some eventually meet physically, because we met in Eclectic's on his website, in these rooms. There would be like a sports room, a music room. We talk hip hop, and it was this community of people, right? But I distinctly remember, like, for a long time, and then Eclectic, he, moved after he, I guess, moved the website. He started doing podcasting, and you would hear a voice. I mean, obviously podcast, but like, unless you had worked with him or something like that, like, nobody knew what he looked like. And I distinctly remember, like, even when he would blog, like, he would say these things, and people weren't really sure if he was a real person. Like, I thought he was a robot or something. And this was like 2008, 2009. Like, I didn't know the guy. And obviously, got to know him, and he's somebody I consider to be a friend. And we've done thousands of episodes. And, a couple of years ago, he made it to Atlanta, and we hung out, and I got a chance to see what he looks like because up until that time I had never seen the dude. Obviously he'd seen me before. And he looks like an eclectic. So anyway, long story short, so even in that community that he built, we got to know each other, and some people had profile pictures, some people didn't. Like Eclectic's profile picture was a bald man with his head down, so only thing you could see was the top of his head, and so you really didn't know if it was him or LL Cool J. So, but anyway, long story short, but I mentioned my blog, and I still have this blog to this day. I started the blog, I want to say in 2007. I really don't blog anymore. I just post, my episodes there now. Every now and then I'll get the itch to type something up and write something or what have you. But what happened was that we had our own little community in our blog community, and it was, I don't know, man, maybe about 20 of us, and we were all really cool and really fly with each other. And we got to know each other, and this was all virtually, but I mean, some people had profile pictures, some people didn't. Some people would post pictures on their blogs, some people didn't. And what was interesting is you slowly but surely get to know people, and you get a rapport, so forth and so on. Well, there was this young lady who I got to know virtually. I think I don't even remember how she popped up on the scene, but she came on the scene, and she got to be cool with everybody. Her name was Raina. She started off in the comments. She would just go to people's blogs and comment. And like, it's kind of hard to explain, but like with our blog community, it was, like I said, it was probably about 20 of us, maybe 25, if that. We would all like blog each day. And like, if Eclectic blogged, I'd go on his blog, comment, I'd blog that day, and then he'd come on my page and comment. And it was like, it was the first iteration of social media. And this was before Twitter started. And what's interesting was, like, our blog community probably got destroyed because of Twitter, because we moved to something that was a whole lot faster as far as real time. Anyway, long story short, this young lady comes on the scene, and she had this profile picture of this model, and her name was Raina. Raina Song. That's what we used to call her. Her name was Raina Song. And she had a website, rainasong.com. And on her website, she would talk about, she was a big advocate for domestic violence. She spoke out very highly about domestic violence. But the thing that was interesting and what was intriguing was, when you would go to her website, you see these pictures of her. And again, she looked like a probably 25-year-old, 26-year-old, let's just say 28-year-old Dominican model. That's how she looked. Light skin, long hair, nice body or what have you. And so, as particularly as men, we're visual creatures. So, guys would be intrigued. So guys would be kind of, in the comments shooting their shots or whatever like that. She was always nice. And, but she was very nice, but still somewhat of a mystery. And like I said, over probably about a 2-year period, she and I got to be pretty cool. And we exchanged numbers. So back then, when you exchanged numbers, you would get someone's number, but we would communicate via a BlackBerry Messenger. Shout out to the BlackBerry Messenger. Man, Blackberries was the joint. I wasn't always team iPhone. Blackberries was the joint. But yeah, I had, and a lot of us were on BlackBerry Messenger. So when we weren't blogging, we would be, in group chats and stuff. It was our first set of group chats. And again, we would frequent her blog. She would frequent my blog. And then I remember, as many of you know, I had a radio show called the 12 Radio Show. And I started that in January of 2010. And the 12 Radio Show was a live show that I did every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio for 2 hours. It'd be a call-in show where you could call in. And so, like, it wasn't until, I think, everybody, like I said, Raina she wasn't dating anybody or anything like that. She wasn't trying to holler at anybody. She was very respectful. And, she's, all you could go off of was her pictures. And so it was like, okay, Raina's cool or whatever. And I think for a lot of guys, and I think they're probably a little bit happy to be talking to a beautiful woman like this, and a beautiful woman who's down to earth. And so, and I'm only just I'm speculating at this point. I wasn't interested because obviously I was married, still am married. Nonetheless, Raina's song was cool. She was cool. She was a good looking woman. She was cool. And so, you know, friendships developed. She became really, really close with some of us, and you know, we got to know a little bit about her background. She told us she was a model. She would travel from time to time for photo shoots. She was from, I want to say she was originally from Kentucky, but she lived I think she lived in Minnesota. I think at the time all of this stuff was going on. So, you know, we're just gathering information, but nobody's tripping. Again, she's one of us. She's a part of the crew. And so, you know, I think what happened was there were some people who wanted to get to know a little bit more about her. And so I distinctly remember I was doing something and I was getting ready for an episode of the 12 radio show. And she hit me up on BlackBerry Messenger. She was like, yo, when's the next time you're doing a show? And I was like, Wednesday. And she was like, well, I'd love to come on the show and, you know, talk or whatever we could talk about, whatever. I think we might have talked about domestic violence. And so I was like, sure, cool. And like I said, she was cool. So again, nobody knows what she looks like. Nobody. And all we have are these pictures, and all of the pictures of her are on this website, and they are beautiful pictures. I mean, they're pictures of her, you know, in the Bahamas. You know, I'll put it like this. She was an IG model before there were IG models. So, although it wasn't said, the community was always, you know, intrigued. Didn't think that she wasn't who she said she was, but, you know, just very intrigued about Raina's song. And so, you know, time goes on. She did a couple of episodes on the 12 radio show. People called in and she talked about dating and relationships, and she was open and honest about her relationships, and she was single and so forth and so on, and yada, yada, yada. And so fast forward to that August, there was a guy I think that she was interested in and he was interested in as well. His name was Wisdom. And so Wisdom, cool guy. He was a part of the community too. Cool guy, real down to earth. We saw pictures of him, his profile picture, and the whole nine. And I think you know, his initial conversation with Raina's were just, you know, pretty on the surface or what have you. And then their conversations got a little bit deeper, and then I guess they wanted to take their conversations from the group chats to the BlackBerry Messenger to actual phone calls. And so I don't know what happened. I know one day I found out, well, here's the thing. She was black and Puerto Rican, but here's the thing. She sounded when we talked, and this kind of threw me off. When we talked on the 12 radio show, she had a Southern accent, and I mean like a deep Southern accent. She explained it that, you know, her family was from Kentucky, and that's where she used to live. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes. If you want a podcast where culture, conversation, and life collide, where you get insightful commentary, engaging discussions, and a fresh perspective on everything, then you need to listen to the 12 Kyle podcast, hosted by the one and only, yours truly, 12 Kyle, a voice that you know and trust. This podcast will bring you thought-provoking moments, compelling stories, and a whole lot of fun. Whether you're a first-time listener or just tuning in, each episode promises to be something new and exciting. So sit back, relax, join 12 Kyle, myself, and my guests as we break down the world around us and give you stories that you've never heard before, from nostalgic throwbacks to everything in between. The 12 Kyle podcast is a front row seat to this conversation. Subscribe now and never miss an episode of the 12 Kyle podcast, where the vibe is always real and the discussion is always worth your time. So forth and so on. But I mean, Black, Puerto Rican, Dominican, that's how she looked. But she sounded like she was from, I don't know, Oakley, South Carolina. Shout out to Danny Foxworth. So yeah, that's how she sounded. And like I said, she co-hosted the show a couple of times. Personally, I considered Raina to be a friend. So lo and behold, as Wisdom is talking to Raina, I can only assume that their conversations started to get a little more heavier, what have you, like that. And I think what Raina didn't know was, if my memory serves me correctly, Wisdom had a background in law enforcement or something. So he had access to, information. I mean, like, and this was the early stages of Google. So it wasn't like you could just Google Raina Song and find out who she was. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I guess curiosity got the best of him. So he started digging because he got her real name. I never knew what I think I remember what her real name was. I mean, let me go back. I think she told me what her real name was, but I knew where's Raina, so I didn't care. And so, Wisdom starts digging because he's intrigued. And the way that the story was told, because Wisdom had a blog as well, he started doing some digging. And I think what made him dig even more was the fact that they had set up some time where they were going to get on camera together. Shout out to, old school cams. You get on put the little camera on top of your computer, what have you. And those were the early stages of that too. So technology really wasn't on your side to find out anything about somebody. And so, I don't know. For all I know, Raina could have been looking just like the woman in these pictures, or she could have been Biggie Smalls' twin. I don't know. And so, but she was supposed to get on camera with Wisdom. And each time that they set up a time to get on camera, something always happened. She had to go, or something, she flaked out or something. And so Wisdom started getting a little curious as to why, we make this plan to be on camera together and, you just disappear. I mean, she literally like ghosted him. And so he started doing some digging, and because he had access to certain information, I guess, Wisdom was able to find out that at the very least, the lady in the pictures was not the lady that we were talking to. And that was not her name. And we quickly found out that we were all catfished by this woman. Here we are thinking that she's our friend and that she's representing this person. She's against domestic violence, and she's this and she's that, and she's this beautiful Black Puerto Rican model. And now we find out that she ain't who she says she is. And so Wisdom reached out to her first and was like, hey, I need to know, this is, I can't even remember how it goes, and his website is no longer up. But, he wanted to find out what was the deal? What was her story? Who was she? And she did not want to come clean. And instead of coming clean at this point, because at this point she doesn't know what he knows, but she does know that he knows that she ain't who she's been portraying to be. She's not the woman in these pictures. And before he lets us know, she cleans everything. She takes down the website. She disables her Twitter profile, all of this stuff. The number it wasn't until I woke up one day, and because I always knew I had 68 friends on BlackBerry Messenger. And like I said, most of us were in this, in this blog community, fellow bloggers. And I got a message, and one of the homies said, "Hey, did you read Wisdom's blog today?" And I was like, "No." And I went, and for some reason I was on BlackBerry Messenger, and I noticed that I had 67 friends instead of 68. And I was like, "Oh, somebody leave and go to iPhone?" Didn't make much of it. So the homie said, "Hey, go check out Wisdom's blog." And so Wisdom in the blog explains everything of how he went through step by step in uncovering this as what we now know as being catfished. Now, I don't think Wisdom was like falling in love with her, but he was kicking it. At least from what I can remember, he was kicking it with her. But he wasn't about to jump out the window, but he wanted to see what's up. I mean, I don't blame him. I mean, if I've talked to you on the phone for a couple of weeks, I mean, and we've been kicking it prior to this, I want to know, I want to see what's what. I want to see, how you look for real. Because the pictures she was a good looking woman. Again, think IG model. I mean, the picture that you see for the cover art, that's how she looked. Oh, that's the picture that was used. But yeah, so we were all catfish. And when I say we, because all of us became friends with her, and we didn't know. And it was a surprise because at this point, again, it's 2010. None of us had ever heard the word catfish hadn't even been invented yet. That's how long ago it was. And so, she played it. And when I tell you she scrubbed everything, by the time Wisdom's blog post hit, she was no longer to be found. Phone number didn't work, or at least, I left a message because I called. I was like, "Hey, what's up? Hit me up. I'll give you a chance to come on the podcast." Well, I didn't say podcast. I said, "I'll give you a chance to come on the radio station and explain what happened." And I don't know. It was nobody, at least to my knowledge, from that point on, nobody ever heard a word from Raina Song again. And I'll read to you what I wrote on my blog, amongst other things. Once I found out that Raina was fake, I was tempted to call her on her cell, since we had spoken by phone, to try to get to the bottom of it. Why would you lie? Why be somebody that you aren't? Keep it real. You think you have to be in a swimsuit? You think you have to be a swimsuit model for people to like you? Do you be you? That's it. The fact that she disappeared once Wisdom found out she wasn't who she was or is speaks volumes about who she is or could be. For all I know, Raina could be a 300-pound female Biggie Smalls lookalike. I don't think people care about that. I think people were really into the person. If you're cool with me, then you're cool. She was cool with me. Now, I don't know, because I'm loyal and I don't like fake. She's got my info. I'm sure she's reading this. She can get at me if she so chooses. And that was what I wrote. That was part of what I wrote on my blog. And it's funny reading some of the comments, because some of the people, that were friends of hers really, really, really were disappointed. Wisdom actually commented on the post. He said, "Good post, man." He said, "Pretty balanced." He said, "I think my blog speaks for itself. I'm not going to go into the details all over again. I will say that I spoke with Raina for about 4 months, and I probably learned more about her this past weekend when I was inundated with emails and DMs from everyone and their mama about their side of the story." Laugh out loud, which is cool. I'm just saying. Anyway, those who were in the know that I was feeling Raina for at least, or who at least I thought she was. Even though I'm the cause of this, I'm ready to move on. And he said basically, his feelings was the reason why he poked a little bit more to try to find more information. And there was a couple other people that commented. Shout out to the homie, my boy Ezel. He said for the record, the picture was not enough to build an internet ship with. So he was kind of chastising. But I mean, Ezel and I have had conversations prior to that, because he had his doubts once he heard her talk. And so I think everybody, was just, some of us were a little disappointed. I wasn't hurt. I don't like fake people. So I was more bothered by the fact that I couldn't sniff out the fakeness, because I'm pretty good at sniffing out fakeness. In conclusion, it was a funny story, a sad story, but a funny story too. It was a cautionary tale for us. Technology really allowed her to be whoever she wanted to be, because she could put up pictures. She could put up that, on her website. She could advocate for domestic violence. I think she even had a fund for domestic violence victims. I think if memory serves me correct, you could donate to her. I don't know what she was doing with the money, and I don't know that people donated, but you could donate to her website. But it was real. It was real. And like I said, what was interesting was, we got catfished and we really didn't know it. And there was a huge fallout from our blogger community when she disappeared. And it was the talk. Raina's song was the talk for months. And I'll be honest, I over the years I've thought man, I wonder what happened to Raina's song. What is she up to? And then I thought about it, with social media now and the way things are, Raina's song really could be someone that listens to this podcast. She could be someone that follows me on social media. I don't know. Maybe she's her real self now. Who knows? But for about 2 years, Raina's song was, cool in our little blog community. And, she catfished everybody. She had a guy really, really dig her. And the more and more he liked her, the more and more reason that gave him to, try to learn a little bit more about her when she balked. And his digging probably saved his heart. And it saved us quite a few jokes. And it also taught us a lesson. Find out who people are. If you have to dig a little bit, and if people are standoffish about who they are, that should be the biggest red flag right there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every Thursday and every Sunday. Also, make sure that you check out our new baby. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. It is the best music podcast that you've never heard. On that podcast, we talk about music and artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s when it comes to rap, hip hop, soul, and R&B. Simply put, folks, it's the best music podcast that you've never heard. So check it out. Also, if you'd like to contribute to the podcast financially, hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Also, we have merch. Check us out. Click the description link in the box, and you can click the merch link in the description box, and there you can find 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. Hey, man, we got it for the low. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle Podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle Podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.